My name is Mariah Pease. Wendy Winder and I work for the Utah Office for Victims of Crime. Today, we're going to go through the certified assurances and grant conditions for the fiscal year 2025 awards that begin on July 1st, 2024. For each assurance, we will be identifying the title and give a brief description of what it entails. These conditions are numbered and titled as you will find them in the FY25 award conditions document. These slides accompanying the webinar are available on the UOVC website. The order of these videos are also listed on this slide. The first section will cover the OVC certified assurances and the VOCA special conditions. The second section will cover OVW certified assurances, VAWA special conditions, and SAS special conditions. The final section will include the UOVC grant conditions, forms, and certification of training. The last section applies to all UOVC federal awards. Award conditions have been updated for the fiscal year 2025 awards. Through this process, we intend to familiarize subrecipients with these conditions. We've provided a companion document to define key terms and concepts and also explain acronyms and abbreviations. As a brief overview, certified assurances are conditions passed down from the federal government with identical language. Grant conditions are state, local, and UOVC specific conditions. Special conditions are additional terms and requirements that are imposed on a specific grant type. Award conditions encompass all federal, state, local, and UOVC specific conditions that must be met.
As explained in the companion document, certified assurances are all passed down conditions from the federal awarding agency, which in this case is OVC. So the first condition is compliance with restrictions on the use of federal funds, prohibited and controlled equipment under OJP awards. What this says is that OJP does not allow grant funds to be used for some specific equipment by law enforcement agencies. These are not likely to be requested, but some examples are firearms, ammunition, grenades, explosives, armored vehicles, and weaponized aircraft. The second condition is compliance with DOJ regulations pertaining to civil rights and non-discrimination. This condition just relates to non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs. Third is compliance with 41 USC 4712, including prohibitions on reprisal notice to employees. This condition indicates that the entity cannot prohibit or punish an employee for disclosure of mismanagement of federal funds or violation of law. Fourth condition is applicability of Part 200 uniform requirements. This condition addresses Part 200 uniform requirements, which was created to streamline regulations and strengthen oversight of federal awards to reduce the risk of waste, fraud, and abuse. The UOVC encourages each agency to familiarize themselves with the information provided on the OJP website, and that link is provided in the certified assurances. And the fifth condition is compliance with applicable rules regarding approval, planning, and reporting of conferences, meetings, trainings, and other events. So if you want to use federal funds for conference expenses, you need to follow the DOJ guidelines. They define conferences as meetings where people travel and conference costs as everything from planning to hosting. Make sure your budget includes these costs and talk to UOVC if you're using federal funds for conferences to make sure everything's okay with DOJ rules. The sixth condition is requirements for data on performance and effectiveness under the award. So everyone agrees by signing the certified assurances to collect and maintain data on performance and effectiveness of work under the award. Seventh condition is compliance with DOJ grants financial guide. So recipients and subrecipients agree to comply with all of the requirements included in the DOJ grants financial guide, and that link is also included in the certified assurances. The eighth condition, compliance with general appropriations law restrictions on the federal funds. This was for funds starting in fiscal year 2022. The recipient and subrecipient basically are agreeing to comply with all of the requirements in the general appropriations law restrictions on the use of federal funds. It covers a whole variety of topics, including things like blocking pornography on computer networks, not using funds in connection with abortion, and allowable training content. The link to these requirements is again in the certified assurances. Ninth condition is compliance with DOJ regulations pertaining to civil rights and non-discrimination. So this condition simply prohibits specific forms of discrimination on the basis of religion. And the 10th condition is failure to address audit issues. So any DOJ condition that is imposed on the OVC due to audit issues would then be passed down to subrecipients as applicable. The 11th condition is requirements of the award, remedies for non-compliance or for materially false statements. So the DOJ sets conditions when awarding funds. If they update these conditions later, the new ones replace the old. Not following the updated conditions can lead to action from OJP. Making any false statements about the award could result in criminal prosecution or losing the grant. The 12th condition is compliance with DOJ regulations pertaining to civil rights and non-discrimination. This condition relates to EEOP requirements, so equal employment opportunity plans, and we'll go into more detail on those requirements in the UOVC grant conditions portion of this training. 13 is employment eligibility verification for hiring under the award. When hiring for any position associated with a grant-funded program, employment eligibility checks must be completed and maintained. So subrecipients are required to notify any contractor paid with grant funds of this requirement as well. Condition 14 is the OJP training guiding principles. This just says training and materials federally funded must follow 4 rules. They must follow the law, be accurate and well-suited, taught by qualified trainers, and maintain professionalism. And 15 is the determination of suitability to interact with participating minors condition. Details on the requirements for this condition are provided in a virtual training module on the OVC YouTube training page. Generally, this condition requires certain checks be done for employees working with a federally grant-funded program where some or all of the activities benefit minors. There's specific checks, timelines, and documentation requirements that must be followed. Nearly all recipients of UOVC awards, at least of the federal awards, must meet this condition. If you're not already familiar with these requirements, we highly recommend that you review the recorded training and reach out to UOVC with any questions. Condition 16 is potential imposition of additional requirements. If the recipient has been designated high risk, then they agree to comply with any additional requirements that are imposed during the period of performance. Again, if the UOVC is ever designated as high risk by OJP, these additional requirements will be passed down to the subrecipients as applicable. Condition 17 is restrictions and certifications regarding non-disclosure agreements and related matters. What this is saying is award recipients may not require employees or contractors to sign or adhere to any agreement or policy that would restrict them from reporting potential fraud, waste, or abuse. Agencies should not be asking or encouraging employees to refrain from reporting anything they believe might be considered fraud, waste, or abuse. Condition 18 is reclassification of various statutory provisions to new Title 34 of United States Code. So in 2017, some statutory provisions were moved to a newly created section, and the provisions moved must still be followed and are incorporated by reference into the award conditions. Condition 19 is the requirement to report actual or imminent breach of personally identifying information, or PII. So any agency who's been receiving grant funds through UOVC was instructed over the last year or two to create a policy about this requirement. Agencies with federal grants are required to notify the UOVC of any actual or imminent breaches of personally identifying information within 24 hours. This would include electronic breaches as well as things like employees releasing PII to unauthorized individuals, paper documents being released, misplaced, or stolen. Condition 20, requirements to disclose whether recipient is designated high risk by a federal grant making agency outside of the DOJ. So if you're notified that you are high risk by any federal funding source outside of the DOJ, you need to disclose that information to the OJP email that is listed in the certified assurances and to the UOVC. Condition 21 is encouragement of policies to ban text messaging while driving. So this condition says it encourages recipients and subrecipients not to text and drive and to have a policy related to that, but it is against Utah law. So your agencies should have policies that already prohibit text messaging while driving. Condition 22, all subawards or subgrants must have specific federal authorization. So if an organization wants to make subawards with federal funding, they would need to get authorization from OJP, but contracts are not considered subawards. 23 is specific post-award approval required to use non-competitive approach in any procurement contract that would exceed $250,000. So all contracts for services over $250,000 has to be done in a competitive manner unless specific authorization is given by the OJP. This is one of the reasons why we require valid contracts for all contracted fees. For contracts that are under this threshold, procurement policies still must be followed. Condition 24 is requirements pertaining to prohibited conduct related to trafficking in persons, including reporting requirements and OJP authority to terminate the award. So this condition prohibits employees, contractors, volunteers, or anyone else involved in an agency receiving federal funding from engaging in or supporting acts of trafficking in persons. This includes procurement of commercial sex acts and uses of forced labor. If anyone suspects this is occurring, it must be reported to OJP and the UOVC. And then condition 25 is requirements to report potentially duplicative funding. So if a recipient of federal funding is receiving other funding that's intended to cover the same costs for items being funded under these UOVC federal awards, then the agency must report that to the OJP in writing and seek budget modification to eliminate any duplication of funding. Condition 26 is reporting potential fraud, waste, and abuse and similar misconduct. So basically, any potential fraud, waste, abuse, or misconduct involving funds under this award must be reported via an online submission to the OIG, the Office of Inspector General. Condition 27 is requirements related to systems for award management and universal identifier requirements. So this says that recipients of federal funding must maintain an active SAM registration and comply with all of the applicable requirements with that program. So 28 is restrictions on lobbying. This condition restricts use of federal funds to lobby. This includes directly or indirectly attempting to influence modification or adoption of laws, regulations, or policies at any level of government. 29 is the FFATA reporting, subawards, and executive compensation. Executive, sorry, my eyes are getting old. By accepting federal funding, the subrecipient is agreeing to provide the necessary information in order for the UOVC to complete the FFATA reporting requirements. And 30 is VOCA requirements. So in order to receive VOCA funding, agencies must comply with the conditions of the Victims of Crime Act, and details of this act can be found on the UOVC website. All right, the last couple for VOCA. Just 31 is discrimination findings. So if a federal or state court or federal or state administrative agency substantiates a finding of discrimination, a copy of the finding must be sent to the Office for Civil Rights. And then 32 is access to services, limited English proficiency. So meaningful services must be made available to individuals whose primary language is not English at no cost to the victim. Further guidance on this can be found at the lep.gov website. So we're going to talk about the VOCA grant special conditions. These are, again, requirements imposed on a grant beyond the standard conditions. So there's just a few of these. The first one is activities that compromise victim safety and recovery and undermine offender accountability. So OVC won't fund anything, OVW won't fund anything that puts victims at risk, stops them from healing, or lets offenders off the hook. They might back alternative paths to justice that focus on survivors and don't endanger victims. UOVC is making this condition apply to all awards, including VOCA, because of how crucial it is. The second one is the match requirement. So VOCA recipients are required to support their program through cash or in-kind contributions that equal at least 20% of the total cost of each program. If this match amount is not met, it can lead to a recipient being required to repay the portion of federal funds that were not matched by the agency. In order for an in-kind or cash match to be eligible for use, it must be directly related to the funded program, and the expenses would have to be those that would be eligible for funding under the grant conditions. So they have the same requirements as the federal funding in order to be used as match funds. The third one is the publication disclaimer. So subrecipients must include a disclaimer statement on all materials and publications supported with grant funds. This would include written, web-based, audiovisual, or any other format. And the statement can be found in the certified assurances. Fourth is the use of volunteers. This just is saying that subrecipients are required to utilize volunteers within their agency. Fifth is subgrant award report, so the SAR. This says subrecipients are required to submit a SAR to OVC within 90 days of the award date, and this will be done through OVC's automated system. And then the sixth one is the VOCA Victim Assistance Rule. So by accepting a VOCA award, the subrecipient is agreeing to adhere to all of the requirements located or listed in the VOCA rule, which can be found at 28 CFR 94.222 222 through 122. And I think that is everything for this portion. Thank you for sticking with us.